In 2018, students chose a book called Night Divided by Jennifer Nielsen as the winner of the Rebecca Cottle program. This year, another book by Jennifer Nielsen is on the list of nominees. It's called Resistance. You can view the author's introduction to the book on YouTube. Resistance by Jennifer A. Nielsen is a historical fiction book about the Jewish underground resistance movement in Poland during World War II. Chaya Linder's family is Jewish. When the Germans occupied Poland, her family was forced to move to a cramped apartment in the Jewish ghetto in Krakow. Chaya was on the list of those who would be sent out of the city. She escaped and came upon a group that was involved in the resistance movement, trying to disrupt the Germans and to save the lives of as many Jewish people as possible. Chaya was 16. Although Jewish, she had fair features and had attended public school, so she speaks Polish. This made it easier for her to pretend to be a non-Jewish Polish girl. She became a courier, smuggling food, weapons, and ammunition into the ghettos, and sometimes smuggling people out. Her younger sister was sent on a train to a labor camp, and her brother had disappeared. Her parents have given up and refused to let Chaya help them try to escape. Chaya becomes more involved in the resistance, stealing supplies and fighting against the Germans. Finally, she sneaks into the ghetto in Warsaw to help the Jewish people there in their final fight, which became known as the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. They were vastly outnumbered and fought against soldiers who had machine guns, tanks, airplane bombers, and flamethrowers. They did not expect to win or to survive, but they wanted to prove that there is value in faith and loyalty, and that a righteous resistance was a victory in itself, no matter the outcome. Amal Unbound by Aisha Saeed. 12-year-old Amal lives in a small village in Pakistan with her parents and younger sisters. She loves school and dreams of going on to college and becoming a teacher. At the market one day, she unintentionally disrespected a member of the powerful Khan family who controls their village. Since her father has borrowed money from the family, Jawad Sahib declares that Amal would be a servant on their estate until the debt has been paid. Fortunately, Jawad Sahib's mother, Nasareen Baji, chooses Amal to be her personal maid, and she is kind to her. Some of the other servants are there by choice and are paid for their services. But many, like Amal, are indentured servants, and since they owe for their room and board, their debts continue to increase, so there is little chance of ever paying it off. Amal learns about some of the family's illegal dealings, but finding someone to report it to would be difficult and dangerous. The family is very powerful and believes themselves to be above the law. But if everyone decided that nothing could change, then nothing ever would. Amal knew that she needed to take the risk to try to earn her freedom. Me, Frida, and the Peacock Ring by Angela Cervantes. You may wish to watch the introduction by the author. "12-year-old Paloma Marquez and her mother are spending a month in Mexico. Paloma doesn't speak Spanish, even though her father was from Mexico. He died when Paloma was only 3, and she hopes to feel closer to him in the country of his birth. Their house is near Casa Azul, the former home of the famous Mexican painter Frida Kahlo, which is now a museum featuring her belongings and artwork. After learning that Frida was her father's favorite artist, Paloma becomes very interested in her paintings, many of which are self-portraits. Paloma is a fan of mystery stories, especially those featuring teenage detective Lulu Pennywhistle, so she can't resist when twins Lizzie and Gail ask for her help to solve a real-life mystery. They are trying to find a jeweled peacock ring belonging to Frida that has disappeared from the museum. This is a mystery story with several twists. Although the story and the ring are fictional, Frida Kahlo is indeed a famous Mexican painter, and many of her paintings and belongings are on display at Casa Azul in Mexico. Becoming Kareem, Growing Up On and Off the Court by Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and Raymond Obstfeld. I'm sure most of you have heard of Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. He's in the Basketball Hall of Fame and is NBA's all-time leading scorer. In this nonfiction memoir, he tells about his childhood and experiences growing up, his start in basketball, and his life through his second season as an NBA player. He was born in 1947 and given the name Louis Alcindor. His friends called him Lou. He grew up in New York City and attended Catholic schools. His parents stressed the importance of education. He was a good student and enjoyed reading. He quickly grew taller than his classmates, but was shy and mild-mannered, so was often the target of bullying. He liked baseball and didn't play basketball until about 4th grade. Although he was tall, he wasn't very good. He was slow and clumsy. But once he decided he wanted to play, he worked hard to improve. Kareem talks about his basketball career and his various coaches through the years. Not only basketball coaches, but also others who taught him about life and helped him along the path to discovering who he was and who he wanted to be. In high school and college, he read about African American history and culture, which he hadn't been taught in school. He listened to speeches by Martin Luther King Jr. and read the autobiography of Malcolm X. He also read about different religions and decided to convert to Islam and change his name to Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, which means noble servant of God. In the last chapter, he said that he has realized that becoming Kareem is not a goal, but a long journey that never ends, and that he will always be in the process of becoming the Kareem he wants to be. Front Desk by Kelly Yang. You may want to watch the video of author Kelly Yang introducing this book. Many of the events in the story are based on her life growing up in California and helping her parents manage motels. Mia Tang and her parents immigrated from China to the U.S. in hope of a better life. Although her parents are educated, her mother was an engineer. Here they could only find low-paying menial jobs, and they lived in their car for a while. Now they are managers of the Cala Vista Motel in Anaheim, California. They get to live in the motel for free, but it's hard work, doing the laundry and cleaning all of the rooms. The owner, Mr. Yao, is not a kind man. He reduced their wages from the original agreement and makes them pay for anything that breaks. His son Jason, who is in Mia's class at school, doesn't seem much better. When she's not at school, Mia watches the front desk at the motel, checking in new customers. She also becomes friends with the weeklies, long-term residents who pay by the week. Mia wants to be a writer, but her mom discourages her because English isn't her native language. She also dreams of getting off the roller coaster of poverty and is willing to work to make those dreams come true. If you enjoy this book, we have also ordered the second book in the series. Long Way Down is by Jason Reynolds. This is a short but powerful book. It deals with various serious topics, violence and shootings, and it contains strong language, so it may not be appropriate for all students, especially those in younger grades. It is written in verse, so it's a quick read. This is what it looks like inside. The audiobook is only about 1.5 hours long. Jason Reynolds calls this book a mix between Boys in the Hood and A Christmas Carol. Here is the author's summary of his book. There's a young man named Will whose brother Sean is murdered, and the next day he has decided that he is going to go and follow the rules. There are 3 simple rules. 1, no crying. 2, no snitching. And 3, you always seek revenge on the person who has hurt or murdered someone in your family or your friends. And so that's the plan. And when he gets on the elevator to go down to the ground floor to avenge his brother's death, he is met by visitors on every single floor. And he knows all of the people who have come into this elevator. The only thing that's strange is that all these people are already dead. And so this entire story of this young man's life and what's about to happen takes place in the course of 1 single minute from the 8th floor down to the ground floor. I do want to caution you about the book trailers. The trailers for this book that can be found on YouTube. The 2 that I saw both began with the sounds of gunshots, and so they may be disturbing. You can listen to Jason Reynolds read an excerpt from this book on YouTube. Nowhere Boy by Catherine Marsh. 13-year-old Max Howard and his family have just moved from Washington, D.C. to spend a year in Brussels, Belgium. Max barely passed 6th grade at home, and now his parents have enrolled him in a Belgian school where everyone except him speaks French. Ahmed Nasser is a 14-year-old boy fleeing his home country of Syria with his father. The rest of their family had been killed when a bomb hit their house. While crossing the Aegean Sea in a rubber dinghy, Ahmed's father was swept away by a wave. They had dreamed of going to England, but now Ahmed is alone and doesn't know where to go or what to do. He follows some of the other refugees to Belgium, but after a failed attempt to hire a smuggler to take him to Calais, France, he ends up hiding in a basement wine cellar in a house in Brussels, in Max's house. Max discovered Ahmed, but inspired by a story of a Belgian man who had hidden a Jewish boy during World War II, Max decided to help Ahmed continue to hide. The two became friends, and Max even figured out a way to enroll Ahmed in school. But Ahmed is still an illegal refugee, and when terrorists attack Paris and then Belgium, it becomes even more dangerous for him. Although Max and Ahmed are fictional characters, the story of Albert Jonard is true. The author moved from Washington, D.C. to Brussels and lived in the house that she described. Her children attended a school similar to Max's, and there were refugees living in the park at that time. Night Books by J.A. White. There is an introduction to the book by the author during an interview. There is also a very good book trailer created by the staff of the Bethel Park Public Library in Pennsylvania. Night Books. Alex has always loved monsters, zombies, and scary movies. He also writes stories in journals that he calls his night books. The other kids at school think he's a freak, so he decides that the first step toward changing and becoming more normal is to destroy the night books. He sneaks out of their apartment one night, planning to toss the journals into the incinerator in the basement. Instead, the elevator stops on the 4th floor, and he finds himself drawn to apartment 4E like he's in a trance. Now he is trapped in the apartment with the witch. Also trapped inside is a girl named Yasmin, who cooks for the witch and takes care of her creepy plants that are used to make various oils that the witch sells, and a cat named Lenore that can turn invisible. Alex is determined to find a way to escape, but in the meantime, he earns his keep by reading the witch one of his scary stories every night. And Alex's stories are also included in this book.